and Breakdowns.
Welcome back to the Chill Sounds and Breakdowns podcast. We have, I think it's going to be a really interesting episode, and I'm really excited, but we're on episode 115 today, and today we have kind of an internet phenomenon that's been going on, and this is like a team effort today, but we have, you know, the dad behind the Little Mosh Kid, Luke, Little Mosh Kid. What's going on today?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. We had a bit of a different setup originally, but
yeah.
I'm here as the other half of Little Mosh Kid. And I'm pumped to be here.
Yeah, which we were talking about. First of all, like for everybody who like does it, because everyone like I think associates it, you know, with Luke, but your name like is.
I'm Nick.
There you go.
Or Luke's dad is.
That's what I was gonna say. Most people were like, "Oh, Luke's dad" or "Little Mosh Kid dad."
Yeah.
I literally was gonna put like "Little Mosh dad" over here, but. Yeah, man. Like, so what we were talking kind of a little bit before this, which is kind of funny because with podcasting, like you're always like, wait, hold on, like wait till we set the recording up, but. How you're starting to view it a little bit more as a team effort, and like outside perspectives are kind of showing you like, oh, you know, like this is us doing it together, and like that's the appeal of it. But yeah, I think that is what people are kind of attracts them to like this, this kid Luke. It's not just Luke. I think it's more like the relationship between you two, like, you know, seeing that just is really heartwarming. But I don't know where you want to start exactly on this, but I kind of just want to know like how does this get going? Like what's going on? Because, you know, from the outside, it's just a kid enjoying music, you know, and taking him to shows. What's going on, everybody? It's OC, your host for the Chill Sounds and Breakdowns podcast, and I'm here today to talk to you about Full Step Go. Now, as you can see today, I am dripped in it. I got the shirt, I got the hat, but Full Step Go is a lot more than just clothes. It's more than clothing, it's a culture. Full Step Go has always been a symbol that cultivates a community of creativity and growth. Whether it's music, artwork, clothing, they are all over the map making waves. They truly do inspire creatives to uncover their potential and discover their true selves. There really is no limits when it comes to your creativity. So follow Full Step Go to join the new counterculture movement and go against the mainstream.
That's basically the core of it. Is a kid that loves martial arts, went to So What Music Festival a couple years ago, and looked at one person was doing hardcore dancing during Saints Can Lie, the first act of that day, and then the pit just died. Like he saw that one person for a short time, and being the observant kid he is, he just asked if he could give it a shot. What, you know, and I didn't see anybody else, you know, and seemed safe enough. And so I said, sure, you know, do your thing. And before we knew it, it just kind of became a thing throughout that weekend. And then I thought, you know, maybe this was just a good father-son weekend, you know, but people started finding my personal info and started contacting me, and I was overwhelmed.
Yeah. Okay, so I actually didn't. I knew that was the first time I had seen, you know, him pop up like on my feed or anything. I didn't know that was like the origin of like kind of where that started. And on top of that, I didn't know it was. I mean, I've seen that Luke does like martial arts, but I didn't know it was just him. Like, hey, they're kind of doing some kicks and stuff. Like, I know how to do some of that. Is that kind of just like his ideology behind it?
So he had this. He'd been obsessed with perfecting a cartwheel as part of his martial arts evolution, and his spin kick. So that was kind of where it all started. Was he just was practicing his spin kicks and his cartwheels, preparing for. To get back from post-COVID and get to start doing tournaments and things again. And he just took it as another just random space for him to practice. And that just kind of, but then it just kind of adopted but it really started during COVID at the beginning when we were locked up, when we were living in Seattle.
Oh, okay. You were living in Seattle.
As a military family, yeah.
Gotcha.
We were in Seattle, and you know, instead of wanting to watch the kid shows, he started wanting to watch music videos of different bands. And at the time, a band that he really just constantly, or a couple of bands he was constantly wanting to watch content of because they were making a lot of content, were Emarosa of Mice and Men, and there was a couple others, but those two really kind of stuck out. And I remember just hearing songs from those two bands, just we'd wake up to it. He'd wake up, he'd learn how to turn on the TV, get to YouTube. We had one of those quick remotes, and we'd wake up to Second and Sebring like every morning. and then he turned that into trying to play the drums and dance and sing. And that became his COVID entertainment when we were in lockdown.
Yeah.
Which, for all you guys here in Texas, Washington's lockdown was 10 times more hardcore than anything you guys had.
Yeah.
So, so that's how we spent our time. We had no real vision of turning it into anything. We weren't like, hey, let's become the next Ryan, or it was never a goal to do anything remotely even. We just, being a military family, a lot of our friends and family are spread out. And the only way that we could communicate during lockdown and kind of share fun memories while we were bored as all get out was to just post what our kids and families were doing online. And on our private accounts. We never thought that one day, somebody else would think to point a camera at him or encourage me to pull my camera out. And anybody would start sharing those content, or let alone be at a festival. But essentially, coming out of COVID, that's exactly what happened.
That's kind of cool. I like that he. I mean, one, I gotta assume that like your musical taste and influence is what he started to open him to music. Was that what really was starting to get him into music?
I mean, yes and no. My wife actually, she says that because he kind of was always seemed to like music, especially to the heavier side since he was born.
Really?
She says that because, so when we first met and we were dating and then eventually married, and she was pregnant, I was stationed in Ventura, California with the Navy. But I'm from San Diego, which is only about a 2 to 3 hour drive, maybe 4 because you got to go through LA. But so we would make the trip to visit our different family on both sides of California pretty often. And since she would get nauseous driving, I would do majority of the driving when she was pregnant. And we would drive during some pretty odd times of the night. So to stay awake, I would listen to the heaviest songs, but at the same time, songs that were easier to sing along to.
Okay.
So I would listen to a lot of Pierce the Veil at that time. So my wife jokes that she thinks that he had an interest in music from that influence, that in the womb, they say well,
that's the thing.
What you listen to. And basically he was headphoned to heavy music from the start. So
yeah, I've heard that quite a bit actually, where people actually will put headphones on the pregnant belly and play
so
music
more
and
people
stuff
will
that.
do Mozart and think they're raising a prodigy or whatnot. I just was listening to Sleeping with Sirens and Pierce the Veil and various bands like that at the time, and being from San Diego, Pierce the Veil and Blink-182 and just bands like that were kind of on a rotation because that's what I grew up with.
Pretty much since birth. That's
birth,
what was listening to.
We didn't, and then when he was born, we didn't really do a lot of Blues Clues or kid shows. He had a small interest in Blippi for a little bit, but yeah, he pretty much from age 2 onward, if you asked him Blippi or music videos, he was going to want to listen to music videos. He's always, and I think it's funny because a lot of times he'll find a song. This happened it was funny because Story of the Year put out an album not too long ago, and I hated it actually. I thought it was a horrible album, and I was still stuck in Page Avenue and Story of the Year will never write another great album again kind of mentality. And he came out to me and was like, no, Dad, you got to listen to it a couple times. And then it's going to be, this album's going to be a hit and everybody's going to love it. And I'm like, you're crazy. I was like, the album is trash. The band is dead. And nothing else is great is going to come out of this thing. And sure enough, he was right. And that album is really fantastic. If you haven't listened to it, it's been out for over a year. If you've been under a rock, if you didn't listen to it, if you haven't, listen to it because he was right the whole time. Has some great songs. And the band, if you watch them live, is better than ever.
What you were saying, you just saw it. I mean, y'all just saw, like, y'all were at the Day to Remember. What was it? 4 Years Strong? We watched Story of the Year a few times last year. Last night, we had the pleasure of watching A Day to Remember. That was a blast. Oh, was the story?
It was 4 Years Strong and the Story So Far.
Story So Far.
Which was also another great band.
Different story.
And they put some new songs out recently, and I also didn't think they were great. Listened to them a few times. Of course, first listen, he was like, "These guys are awesome." Yeah. I'm like, I don't know, man. Clairvoyant. I'm still stuck on chill back story. The story so far. So I'm like, but he was right again. So yeah, he actually usually beats me to the punch on getting into the a lot of the songs that become great. He's
got a radar for him
right out the door, right out the gate.
Well, I'm not like that. That's one of the things that actually did really interest me. That one of the first time I actually spoke, maybe to both of you, I guess in a longer like extension period. I think it was at the Rail Club. I can't remember what show we were doing, but I would just like talk to him because with kids, I'm like, well, let's see how much is he just coming? Is he having fun time at the show, being able to mosh? And I spoke to him, I was like, oh, who are your favorite bands now? And Luke starts listing artists and albums. He's like this artist, but really just this album is my favorite. And he's naming I'm like, oh, you have a well developed music taste. And to me, I was like, that's so cool because of how young he was. And the only thing I have to compare it to is my own childhood. I'm like, I like music, but I don't ever remember having specific albums or knowing albums or artists and stuff like that. I just enjoyed it, for the most part. But seeing him at that young age have not only favorite artists but favorite albums and sounds, just the way he was speaking about it, I'm like, oh, you are you have a well developed palate. And it was really cool to see, honestly.
Yeah, we that's why I kind of been wanting to come on this podcast or some podcasts because we get not a lot, but we have had folks throughout time that swear up and down, and I call them keyboard warriors or whatever. That I basically am just dragging him to shows for clout and for freebies. Yeah, and that he doesn't. There's no way that he knows the songs, or likes the songs, let alone really knows them, or whatever. And I don't like to engage online or give any validation to keyboard warriors, so I don't delete comments, but I usually don't reply to anything either. I just kind of let it run because negative usually just it's whatever.
Yeah, it's just people who are at home wanting to say something.
Yeah, but they're you said it. He genuinely, without, yes, do I have an influence on him? Obviously, I'm his dad. I'm his parent. What parent? I mean, if you as a parent aren't having some kind of direct influence on your kids' interests or supporting or helping them develop, I mean, they can't drive themselves to their sports games or their piano lessons or whatever their interests that you're noticing from a young age that they have a raw talent in. Yeah. If you're not wrapping yourself around that and providing them the tools to develop it and be the best they can be at it, and you're not having an influence on that, then I'd question your quality of parenting or how truly involved you are as a parent with your child. So obviously, yes, some of it, and some was natural. I grew up playing drums, so we had a drum set in the house. Yeah. So obviously that was, we had tools around the house, and he adapted to what he saw around him that was available.
Well, that's, I mean, when you think about just growing up, everything around you is going to be an influence.
Yeah.
I mean, so like if you're like, sometimes like if you're, I mean, and it could go, you know, one of two ways. Like if your parents listen to like all this type of music, sometimes you either like really get into that or you really go the opposite and like whatever. But everything does have some sort of influence. But for the most part, especially when you're growing up, like if your parents like something, like that's what you're listening to all the time. So you grow accustomed, like I said, like from the womb, you know what I mean? It's already been playing, but even after that, like they see that you enjoy that, so they want to enjoy it. Like they're like, oh, they're having fun listening to that. Like I want to have the same type of fun. And then they start enjoying it, and then they develop a real, actual like music taste and music, you know, palette and what they like. And even to the point where now like it's different. Again, you were just to the example you just gave, you know, that album where you're like, this is trash. And he's like, no, like I like this, you know, to the point where that alone shows that they're like, you know, Luke's developing his own like musical taste, because he's not afraid to even like oppose you now, to be like, no, I like this, you know.
There are a lot of artists, like there's a new artist out of Tennessee called Minute After Midnight. I've always seen them post tons of content as just this one guy. I don't know if it's a band. I don't really know, but they have this one song called Ghost. And I think it's like just a hit maker song. Like I love it. And I was just like, Luke, gotta listen to this song. This thing is awesome. And hey, if for some reason somehow the guy or guys in Minute After Midnight ever see this, I love you guys. It's no diss to you, but Luke, he's not on board yet, but I'm working on it. But nonetheless, I think this song is awesome. But like you said, he just didn't have the same level of excitement for the song. He's like, it's okay. Yeah. And so he definitely, as you said, he definitely has his own palette and likes. And we definitely butt heads on certain bands or songs or albums, or we'll introduce each other to different things. You know, he has his own Spotify on his own phone, and his most played stuff is dramatically different, actually. Like, well, as a family, if you were to look at the whole family, a band that's going to always pop up in the top 10 to watch live. My wife doesn't really like going to shows, but the one band that will get her out of the house is Sleeping with Sirens. Sleeping with Sirens? Sleeping with Sirens will get her front and center. Is the only band that she like, them and Emarosa. But that's just because Emarosa's ridiculously hilarious and fun to watch. They're a live act. Yeah. But yeah, those two bands those are the family's like favorites. You're gonna catch those two. If one of those acts is coming anywhere close to where we are living at the time, that's like one of the two bands. You will see the whole family out front and center singing along. Yeah. VIP, enjoying. You know, the band knows us, we know them. We hang out, we have a good time. That's it. But see that I don't know, just one little thing where you mentioned where you were talking about that band from Tennessee where you're like, oh, you know, Luke, check out this song. That just phrase and relationship between like, you know, father son. It's like, hey, like it's something. I don't know. Music's always been super special to me, but having like your family be able to have that, like, you know, direct, because I mean. I grew up with just, you know, my mom is a single parent, and she did influence a lot of like the music that I did. Now, I mean, it's a while ago, you know, so it's not the same today where it's like, oh, like this song just came out, like stream it or whatever. Oh yeah. But it was whatever was playing, you know, Sunday mornings when we had to clean everything or whatever. So there's a lot of that influence that still sticks with me, but being able to see like what that relationship looks like now, and even a little more in depth, because like music is such a big part of both of your lives, where it's like, oh, like listen to this, like, and being able to trade like actual like opinions back and forth seems like such a cool like added like benefit to like the relationship with like father son, and help that build, you know what I mean? I definitely do enjoy seeing that. And I think I mean, when you're talking about like the comments from like the keyboard warriors and stuff like that, or whatever they're saying, it is a concern because everybody, they see it so often now, I guess, in media, where it's like you have those relationships, like, I don't know, like all those like pageant shows, like they go on like Netflix and things like that. So I think it's like people see something like that and they're like, well, everybody's like that, you know, this
type of organic relationship that's just fun can't exist. You know what I mean? I'm like, and when you go, and I think most people will vouch, whoever sees like, you know, Luke out there, like he's legitimately having fun. Like the only time I ever see him like kind of not is maybe when I see him tired and he's like ready to go. Like that's the, like other than that, but I'm like, who doesn't? Like I get tired and I'm like ready to go. And you know, so that's like a natural thing. But when he's like out at shows, I see him singing songs, you know, I see him like nodding along, like knowing what like the lyrics are to things. I'm like, oh, he's got like, these are artists that he enjoys like thoroughly on a national and local level that I've seen. And I'm like, that's so cool to see at that young of an age, to learn like what the music scene is looking like from, you know, micro to macro. You know, it's so interesting to see what that development's going to look like the older he gets.
Yeah, I think it's really, I think that's the coolest thing that we've been able to do, specifically here in Dallas. You know, in Seattle, we went to a few shows when he was really young, and in California was when he went to his first show. Actually, he was in a belly carrier on me. We actually went to a thing called Face Down Fest, which was put on by Face Down Records, and it was a plea for purging and War of Ages. Wow. And Sonny actually from POD guests on one of War of Ages' better known songs. And he actually, out of the shadows, came up and he was there. It was a glorious event. Yeah. And to be able to say that was Luke's first show, and he doesn't remember it outside of the pictures and videos, but it was cool because a few years later, we went and saw War of Ages, and they actually remembered meeting him a few years prior to that at Face Down Fest and seeing him. And this was before Little Mosh Kid became a thing. We were just at a show, but really from the tiniest of days, he's had and you see pictures from even that show in Seattle, and he was already fixated. And you could tell that he was already in his young mind, like having the idea that that's going to be me when I get bigger. The fact that it happened organically younger than I think he even thought he would. I think he's always had this from the youngest age. If you watched him even in our living room, you know, watching those music videos, that he has this like fearless vibe. I always have asked people, like, you know, because as his dad, you know, you kind of wonder, like, what's the appeal? You know, like, we're just a father and son going to shows and having fun. Like, what's the appeal for people to want to, you know, capture us and the emotional side of what we're doing? Like, what created an audience? You know, what made, you know, millions of people during So What that weekend watch these videos on all these different channels? You know, what put us on Loudwire and Revolver's eyeballs? Like, because as a parent, you don't know. Like, you're biased. Like, I think every parent thinks they have the greatest kid in the world and is going to become, you know, the next Dave Grohl or some, you know, or become the next A Day to Remember. You know, I think every parent in their own special way has that ambition for their kid. At least I think they should. I think every parent should have, you know, a goal that their kid is going to be the next big thing regardless. So to kind of have a little sliver of that start unfolding so young, and, you know, to hear people like, you know, in different bands that, like, bands back to when I was still in high school, like Under Oath, pulling your kid up on stage and capturing him and seeing so many people, you know, commenting and sharing and having fun with it, and still a year later still coming up and being like, or you know, years removed, is this the So What kid or is this the Under Oath kid? Yeah. What's his real name? And having an invested interest in, like, really genuinely want to know the backstory of, like, this kid that has, you know, and wanting to kind of find out, like, well, what led to the opportunity that somebody like Anthony Green spotted him in a sea of faces and, you know, brought him up, or you know, or the off chance that we got to be at this show, we got to be what wound up being the last U.S. appearance of Stephen Christian and Anne Boleyn.
Yeah.
And what caused him to find him in that massive crowd and announce him and bring him up. And then Luke responded in a way that I don't think he thought he was prepared for. And when he saw it, he just was like, you saw his heart get warmed up. And he just went with it. You know, seeing things like that and then being present without us even knowing to what would become Matty Mullen's first show with Anne Boleyn here in Dallas. To just have those kind of encounters so organically and just piece it together as our father and son history. Like,
yeah,
it's crazy that, you know, I don't know if this is going to continue or evolve or where it's going to go. You know, he's 8, you know, and I don't know if we're building his future. Like, for all I know, he's going to become, you know, a musician in the next A Day to Remember, and you know, or maybe not. We don't know, but I can't not. You know, I just let it go. I just let things unfold and happen, and I think that's the coolest thing as a parent in this whole scheme of things, that we've been able to do that, and it's just been a lot of fun. That
is really fun, and what I was thinking, and I think I was going to ask this later on, but like, so you'd be perfectly fine of like, you know, let's say, you know, in the next year or two, whatever, it looks like, you know what, like let's say he wants to dedicate full time to like martial arts, and it's like, this is like what I'm into, like you know, focuses all his energy like onto that, and you know, the Little Mosh Kid like kind of Constantine like kind of goes away. It's perfectly fine because you as a parent is just like, I'm supporting what he's into, and like
absolutely.
Kind of.
I mean, I would not support him just like quitting everything.
Yeah.
You know, like, but as long as he is focused, being productive, having fun, and advancing his skills, where every year he is growing and building to an older version of himself, and he is building to becoming a good quality adult citizen, and he's just every year just if Little Mosh Kid evolved and continues and stays around and becomes something far beyond a Little Mosh Kid, but you know, like how you have brands that like Dirty Ghetto Kids.
Yeah.
Obviously there are no longer Dirty Ghetto Kids, but the brand name stuck for all these years, and it's continued to evolve, and that brand has stuck around regardless if it literally is a bunch of kids skateboarding around in urban areas, you know, having fun. If Little Mosh Kid evolves into that and he wants it and he keeps working at it, then I'm all for it. We'll bring in more people. We'll go for it. If this is just a father and son hobby for a passing moment and he dedicates something else or wants to start another brand or another business, another channel or something different in his life or dedicates to something else, I mean, then that's his choice. Little Mosh Kid is simply me just giving him an outlet that he is wanting to have existing right now for him to share his life. I didn't even do social media before all this happened. A lot of it I still have to like Google things to find out how to even create a lot of the things he's wanting to. It's like,
because
give me a minute, because I don't even know. That's an awesome idea. Put a pin in it, because I have no idea what kind of equipment or skills or software or editing. I have no clue how to create that. But being the supportive parent I am, I will do the research.
Figure it out.
And I'll figure it out, and we will come back and we'll make that idea happen. You know, and sometimes it's a quick figure out, and we make it the next day. We post it. We have fun. The opportunity comes, and everything works. Sometimes we literally have notebooks he has like notebooks and memories in his head of different ideas, and some of them we've yet to be able to execute because they're just out of my skill wheelhouse. But, you know, we will get there. Yeah. Because ultimately, I'm trying to support all his ideas regardless of what it is.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about like the idea of like just working with what you have and pretty much just like taking shots in the dark here. You know what I mean? Like if you don't know how to do something, like yes, try to learn how to do it if you can, you know, and figure it that way. I think a lot of people get they get stopped right away if it becomes like, oh, it's something I can't do this. Like, so that's where the idea ends versus just trying to figure out how to do it with what you have. Because I remember, and I I talk about this a lot, but I remember being the type of person who would like pick up a hobby or something I wanted to do, and I'd have to buy everything for it first, and then I'd realize like, oh, I don't actually enjoy doing this, but now I have all this like equipment and stuff.
If you're forced to kind of do
like,
something.
I was terrible. I would just leave it. Like I bought drums and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to be a drummer. And then I had them like in my room and I'm like, I don't like, I was like, it's fun to just smash them up. But like the joy of learning for that, like wasn't there. So I would always do that. So I did that. I grew up playing, classical and then flamenco guitar. And then I wanted to join a band and I ended up just, buying like an electric guitar and like a giant half stack and like I was just like, yeah, like let's go. And I started playing. I'm like, oh, this doesn't translate over like as well as I thought it. And it ended up just like dropping. I ended up selling it to like the other guitar player of that band or whatever. But yeah, I would have a bad habit of like doing that. And I remember that one of the first projects I did was I think 2020 before like the shutdowns and everything. Like I was like, I've always wanted to start. I've always enjoyed creating like videos and content. Like when Vine was around, like I was always making stuff. When there was little like flip cameras came around, my friends used to skateboard, so I used to be like the film like that. So it's always interested me. So I'm like, I want to start like a vlog. And immediately I was like, let me get a camera. And then I was like, you know what? I forgot what it was, like the iPhone that had just come out that year. I'm like, I have this phone. I go, if I can't do it with this phone, then it means I don't want to do it. So I forced myself and I started just putting stuff out. And also like committing myself to like, oh, one will be out every week, regardless of what it looks like at the end of that week. Like it's gonna be out, one, to move on creatively and just like, oh, get better. And then you start realizing the more you pile those up, you look at like your first to your like current and you're like, look at how far you've come just by little victories, little at a time, like doing stuff here. But it's always finding those things that you want to actually dedicate time to. Who's going to sit there and like, you know, learn how to, you know, edit, you know, audio or edit video, or, you know, what are you interested in? Like people who play instruments, like, are you sitting down and like playing your guitar or drums for hours at a time, just trying to figure stuff out? Like the thing I found the most enjoyable is stuff that feeds that, feeds your creativity and then feeds, your joy of learning. Like if you're just like, I want to figure out how to do this and I'm gonna sit here until I do, like those are the stuff that you need to dedicate more time to. Like those are the things that you should be encouraging. Those are the things that you know you need to be doing. But yeah, I think figuring stuff out, I mean, that's cool that he's having ideas and just like this idea, and that you're able to, you know, help him out, even though like everything can't be done at once. Like, you know, the ones you can, you try and help out, like develop that.
Yeah, because what I've had a few people in time, again, never, it's funny because it's never face to face or in person, or it's never even, it's always a keyboard warrior. But or it's funny, I've even had some people will send me a message, be like, well, you know, when I was sitting next to you, I noticed this and I was gonna tell you, but it's like, wait, you saw this, you had the opportunity because you were feet away from me and to ask or critique something, and then we could have hashed it out, and then you could have figured out, well, I'm an idiot, or maybe I'm an idiot not noticing something, thanks for pointing it out. But no, you purposely waited to eliminate the face-to-face, and then you went to the comments.
Yeah.
But people have said, like, I can't believe you capture things the way you do, or you take advantage of when bands invite you, or you get kind of a hookup to be in a spot that you don't belong. You're not a professional photographer, videographer. You're not a professional influencer. And my thing is like, what qualifies not just you but anybody as a professional?
I was like, what's a professional influencer? That was my first question.
Because what most people don't even know is I went to film school in the mid 2000s. And I started creating a lot of this point and shoot and funny challenges, kind of like what Mr. Beast even has made a huge living off of. Me and my friends in SoCal, bunch of skater kids, surfer kids, you know, musicians and whatnot. But me, I was never that great of a surfer or a skater. I was good enough where I could keep up with the group.
Yeah.
But or even a musician. I drummed but I was never that passionate or great. But the one thing I was super passionate about and really great at, even back then when you had to put 2 VCRs together and fast forward, rewind, the one thing I had the patience and the knack for and willingness to do and an eye that most of my friends, they were great at skating, they were great at doing these things, but they had no patience or knack on how to capture it. Me, I was all about it. So naturally, in high school, I got a little handy cam. Like you said, you work with what you have with the budget you have. A lot of times people think like, oh, if I don't have this equipment, I'm not going to be able to look a certain way so people won't take me serious. But once I have all this awesome stuff, I will build it and they will come. But if I don't have this stuff, nobody's gonna take me serious. It's like, it's the opposite, dude. More people will pay attention if they see your hustle and your passion and your grind, your development. If one week you look a certain way, but then a week later you show a little progress, and maybe and then you find a way to make a little money. Maybe you throw a show or you throw a skate event and you raise a little funds, and then you get one new piece of equipment and you just organically build. That was me in high school. So over time, you know, I thought once college came up or the idea of the next chapter of life, you know, I would follow in that as my passion, my business. That's how I want to make a living. Originally, my dad and my stepdad both encouraged me to join the Navy, ironically, in 2005. My mom was so fixated on the fact that if I joined the military, I was going to wind up on CNN's dead sailor count, you know, and get reported. And that if I went to war, if I joined the military, I was going one-way ticket straight to the desert, you know, tap, you're out. And that was it. Yeah. So I chose to follow kind of my mom, went to film school. Well, in the midst of film school through my first about year and a half, I started submitting all my assignments. Well, a lot of it was live music, extreme sports. I was in Southern California at the time anyway, so, and in the mid-2000s, I'm not sure exactly how old you are, but if you were around, especially in California, you realize that metalcore and extreme sports, X Games, Tony Hawk, that kind of stuff, video games of action sports and music, you know, Guitar Hero, and consoles coming out and whatnot. 2005, I mean, literally that Story of the Year album wrote a song called 2005 talking about how great 2005 was. 2005, I didn't realize moving 20 years later how huge of a year in our scene 2005 would be cemented in history. But 2004 to 2006 was a massive year, and I was going through senior year into college organically through that time period. So that was what I was capturing, and that was what I loved, and that's what I was editing. So naturally, when we have video assignments and things, that was the kind of content that I was creating and turning in. And I had teachers that were giving me barely passing, sometimes even failing, all the way to not even accepting my work as passable for a grade. Saying that content was cute, but we were here, this was film school, this is the big leagues, and that kind of content had no future, and that they basically were here to educate me on how to take my education into a job. And that kind of content, nobody was paying for it. There was no future financially in that. So that basically, they were saying, this is university level film school, big leagues. You can take that cute content to, you know, Hobbyland or maybe to the junior college, but this isn't the place for it. So naturally, I lost scholarships. I didn't meet the requirements for my student loans anymore, even because I wasn't maintaining grades, and I didn't have the money to weather financially the tuition costs without that assistance. So ultimately, I was forced out of film school, and in that discouragement of failing film school essentially, and being straddled with debt, that I since I didn't maintain the grades, I no longer got the freebies. So I now was obligated to pay that debt. So on top of not having money to finish, I also was straddled with the debt of the time that I was there and didn't really get credit for. So in that discouragement, I packed up, went back to San Diego, and kind of looked at the next steps, and kind of went through a number of motions, a lot of different cookie cutter jobs, made some decisions on life, and over the next few years it kind of unfolded, and I wound up in the Navy anyways. But this time, instead of having the opportunity to really choose what I wanted to do in the Navy and having my destiny in my hands, I was at the mercy of the Navy now because I was desperate for a paycheck. Okay. So I had to take whatever job was most immediately available to get me to boot camp and get a paycheck. So through a few different obstacles, I joined the Navy, went through a few different schools, and eventually settled at being a cook. Really? Which isn't bad.
Yeah.
It gave me a paycheck. I've met all kinds of great people, traveled the world. But in the midst of that, I walked away from the things that I loved. I walked away from music. I walked away from film, extreme sports. I had a skateboard that I basically hung in the garage. And the video equipment I had just kind of got dated. I still have a Canon GL2.
Really?
If I don't know if you're familiar
I'm
with it.
I'm going to put a picture of it here.
it is one of the original skateboard action sports camera, predating GoPro or anything. It had a built-in handle. All the things that you basically pay extra for GoPro outside of, GoPro gives you this little thing, and then they tell you to make it great, you need to buy
all the extra
37 other
stuff.
things. This camera was the GoPro with the 37 extra things all in one. Canon eventually realized that we're giving away too many free things with this prosumer camera. So we got to part it out, and it never was the same.
Yeah.
The next generations, and then GoPro became a thing. But I missed that generation of growth. So long story short, I don't know what a professional is necessarily, other than somebody that takes whatever is in front of them and finds a way, especially these days, to create something awesome and put themselves out there. And if you can get a following or impact people or do something meaningful, if it affects one person or millions of people, get out there, use what you have, and do it. And there's no reason to criticize anybody that is simply taking what's in front of them, be it the gear, the opportunity, the people, whatever it is. If they have a bug up their butt of an idea to capture something and create it, and it influences somebody to do something positive, then there's no need to knock it. Pure and simple, if you don't like something, then just turn it off.
Yeah.
Don't follow it. Don't share it. Don't like it. Don't comment it. If you love it, support it. Give that positive feedback. If you don't, then just walk away. Like, you don't need to add insult to injury by trying to discredit, somebody that's just out there trying to do something good.
Yeah, because you really don't know where everyone's at on their skill building journey. Like, maybe you're just like, it's like, I don't even really am paying attention to this. I just want to know what it comes out with. Like, I'm just recording something, or someone happened to give you an opportunity. Yeah, I'm here. You know what I mean? Like, the people feel like you're in a place where you shouldn't be, feel like they're entitled to that spot or whatever thing. Or it's like the whole attitude behind like when an idea happens and someone's like, well, I could have thought of that. I'm like, yes, but you didn't.
But you
know,
didn't. Yeah.
you know, like that's the biggest thing. And it takes a bit of growth because I think I maybe in like when I was a lot younger, like I would go through like spells like that where I'm like, oh, well, you know, I wish I could do that, but I can't. And then I have a lot of like friends now around me that have more of the attitude that's like, well, then just do it. Like, because I am one of those people that has a lot of ideas. And then a lot of times DJs the one that just has to be like, well, then just do it. You know what I mean? Like this podcast alone, like was just one of my ideas. Like, is we were throwing a festival and like DJ wanted help promoting, you know, Chill Sounds and Breakdowns, the festival. So I'm like, I had just gotten into listening to podcasts. So I'm like, oh, we should do a podcast. And I just offered it up. But that's usually I wait for like the gratification of being like, that's a good idea. And then I'm cool. I don't have to do anything else. Like I already got the pat in the back. Like I don't need to do this. And he was the one who's like, well, do it. Like what? And I was like, well, you know, and part of me was already thinking of like the excuses. Like that's my old attitude used to be like, oh, let me think of really quick why I can't do this. And immediately like all that stuff was like, well, you know, I'll help you. What do you need? Like, oh, I was like, I don't know how to do the audio. It's like, cool. I'll help you do the audio. I'm like, all right. Like I kind of know Cameron's like, we'll figure that out, set that up. And everything is just learning. It's like, yes, if you want to do something, you can just do it. I get the fact that like resources aren't equally available to everybody, but you can start, you can work with what you have, borrowing stuff. I think like when the podcast initially started, I was borrowing a camera like for a long time because I'm like, someone had one, so I'm like, let me borrow it. You know what I mean? The mics, like I was telling you earlier, like, oh, at least now like they're the same type of mic, but before like everybody had a different sort of mic. I was using my apartment's living room, you know, so I had to rearrange everything, you know. Then now, you know, little steps, you know, now like we have a specific room for it, you know what I mean? Like I don't have to move anything around while we're in here, you know, like it's already set up. But little victories like that, a lot of what helped was that little bit of encouragement and not focusing on like someone saying this isn't good. But at the end of the day with me, like I'm the person that's the worst at that, saying that to myself. But that's also why I like putting something out on a weekly basis, because it's, no matter what it turns out, like I go, that's what happened there. Because sometimes, like, because I'm the one that edits these, so I have to go back and listen to them and watch them again, and I realize like I've said that story on here, like the past like 3 podcasts. So, like maybe I need to like mix it, but like again, like things like that, like it helps me move forward and being like, okay, well, it doesn't matter because I already did that. Like, so let's move on to the next one. What are we gonna do here? You know, what are we doing for the following episode? This person's coming on. This person's coming, and then focusing more on like what makes it fun. But a lot of people do tend to criticize like work that maybe they want to be doing, or they just, again, there's nothing in their life maybe like giving them some sort of fulfillment. So like a little critique here, a little critique there of like, hey, you should be doing this instead, or this and that. Like the unsolicited like advice is crazy, like sometimes, to be honest. Like I've had like, I forgot somebody like messaged me about like, oh, like you need to do this with your, like, out of nowhere, and I'm just like, I don't even talk to you like on a regular basis, like, you know what I mean? Like, so I do take it's always the idea of like being open to criticism, but I'm also like open to criticism from the right people. I
think relationships that is a huge thing, and it's those trusted relationships that you a lot of times, like for instance, like my wife, she says some probably the meanest things, but it comes out of a place of love and trust because of the marriage relationship we share first and foremost. So when she comes out and says some stuff that is harsh, it's not harsh because it's not unsolicited, because that's my go-to gal. Like that's the person that I expect to be honest with me and give me the hard truths about what's going on in my life, be it with Little Mosh Kid or even the Navy or anything. But sometimes, some random keyboard warrior is not going to get the same reception from me, even if they said the same thing, because they're not that person in my life. Like,
there's no trust built there.
You don't have the right.
Yeah.
Like, we're not on that level. So yeah, I get what you're saying, that like a random fan at one of your shows could say something critical about something going on at the show. And it's like, well, who are you?
Yeah.
But if DJ comes and is like, yo, OC, man, he could say this, he could point out the same thing. But because it's coming from him, it's like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
Let's get on that and get it done. Because you trust him that what he's saying is true. The other person, you're like, how do I even trust that what you're saying is true? Like, how do I know that's a thing?
And that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, you do get those instances where, like, someone will say something like, oh, they're right. But I'm like, but, you know, why? It's weird when they choose to, like, say that, you know, because, like, when I know, like, if DJ tells me, like, hey, like, something was wrong with the audio and I was like, blah, 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 like, there's a perfect, like, time to tell me, like, oh, I'm receptive to, like, hearing this right now. But if you're like, if I'm out in the wild doing something else and you're like, hey, like, this and that, like, you know, you did this wrong or blah, 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 I'm like, I'm not in that mindset. So regardless if it's good, like, a good critique or good advice, like, I'm not going to hear it. One, because, like, I'm not in the right mindset. And then two, like, I don't know, like, why, like, I don't know you on that level, so why I'm not trusting you.
They know your schedule. They know how you're operating. So, like, they know, like, hey, he just got this terrible news about, you know, something. So this isn't the right time. But tomorrow, when he's processed, I know that that's going to be a great time to bring up this thing.
And then the trust, too, which bringing back to the trust is, like, I know why he's telling me that. He's telling me that because at the end of the day, we want to put out something, like, good and better. So, like, it's to be better. Like, it's the same conversation I've had with quite a few bands now. Is the idea I always ask them, like, oh, how good are you guys at being honest with each other when you don't like something, like in a song or writing this and that. And a lot of people nowadays, like the successful ones that I've looked at, I'm like, oh no, like we completely like are honest with each other, but there's a right way to communicate. Like, because I always talk about, like, my old band when we were getting going had the worst communication when it came to creativity. Like, we didn't like something, but instead of being like, oh, you know, I think we can write something different here, blah, 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 I was just like, nah, I don't like that. It's not good.
Yeah, and then, like, so you get flamenco guitarist.
Yeah, and then you get defensive, and then you're just like, what do you mean? Like, and it's like, oh, no, it's good. Then you feel, it's also like learning to separate, like, a critique on music from somebody in the same band. I go, the reason they're critiquing is because at the end of the day, that the song comes out under one band name, you know what I mean? So it's all y'all's project, and you guys all want to write the best song possible. But I would always take it as like, no, they don't like me, you know, like, so figuring that and growing up out of that. And again, learning that in bands, in you know, businesses, whatever, if you're getting a critique, it's because, like, at the end of the day, like, you're all trying to better yourselves. Like, you're trying to do something, like, good. And again, if it's your business, if it's a band, if it's, you know, anything you're creating, like, you should be able to trust your teammates to tell you that sort of stuff and be okay with it, you know? And obviously you also want to learn each other's languages and stuff like that, so you're able to communicate effectively, you know? I know, like, oh, you know, I know exactly how to tell you something because I want you to do something about it, not just because I'm trying to hurt you or I'm trying to tell you that you're not good enough, because it shouldn't be that way. Like, I've been in some stuff that, like, it has been that way. There people are intentionally doing stuff to, like, just hurt you or this and that, but that's not the right team. But when you're in the right team, you feel comfortable enough to be like, yes, I can tell you this, I can tell you that, you know?
Yeah, I think being that we're not a band, but we're not a business either. We're just kind of like I wouldn't even say we're influencers. We're not really on that kind of level. I think we're just a father and son that got the opportunity to do some really cool stuff. And however long it lasts is awesome, or whatever we're building. But I have seen, when it comes to local bands, and we've been able to become good friends with several. And you see some bands that are out when they're not even playing. You see a lot of bands at shows, or you just even run into them, you know, passing through Deep Ellum and you're at Serious Pizza or something, and you walk in and you'll see a band that's together. You know, I see a few bands that I've seen at shows the most that seem to, like, be brothers and great communicators outside of just the band moment. I see bands like From the Tides and Brave Days and Pennyboard. You see those guys and some of the other bands are associated to, like Johnny and New Heroes. And you see these bands out there having a great time together, Undercurrents and Waiting for April. We run into them all over the place, not just when they're playing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the coolest and greatest thing, is when bands on a local level create that great communication, that hard work ethic, and their brothers or sisters or, you know, outside of the moment where they need to be together. That, and I see these bands that have, you know, we got to go to some of their early shows or when they were just getting going, and you've seen them over the past 2 years of us being in this particular scene, having these great advancement moments.
Yeah.
And being able to, you know, work with even like further north. Luke got to sing with them their song Echoes, and we made a video with them.
Yeah.
And just those kind of random opportunities and seeing that kind of camaraderie is really, really cool. And then going back years prior, realizing that like Chris from further north, the fact that we haven't been best friends for the last 20 years with how close proximity we were to each other, and that it took Little Mosh Kid in Dallas, Texas to finally create that realized bond and friendship that we're like, man, when we exchange stories, it's like, wait, what band were you playing with? Or who were you traveling with? Who were you teching with?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I was with so-and-so in Arizona. It's like, I was too. Like, like how did, you know, so I think that's the coolest thing was I was much younger and dumber and did not take advantage of a lot of blessings and opportunities that were right in front of me. And like the film school incident, I took it all as negativity, and I buried my head in the sand and walked away and just put all my equipment on the shelf, put all my skills on the shelf, and just gave up. And it took a 6-year-old kid that was obsessed with martial arts and heavy music at a festival that honestly I had no intention to bring him to. I grew up with a lot of bands from San Diego coming out to Dallas in the early mid 2000s when the Plano Center and Mike Z was doing
Plano
things
Center.
and talking about these shows that were happening in Dallas. And I always was like, man, if I ever am anywhere close to Dallas at any point, I gotta see what this guy Mike Z is doing. And these other people that are working with him. Like, there's something magical happening in Dallas, Texas, in the heavy music scene that isn't being replicated or seen, you know, in too many other areas around the country. But I'd always say one day I'm going to travel to Dallas. But then, like you said, you get all these great ideas, but then you let excuses and other events get in the way of you getting up and going and doing the thing. So I always had this dream of, man, I'm going to go out to this organic thing happening in Dallas. I'm going to bring my equipment. I'm going to get a plane ticket or get in the car when one of these events is happening. And I remember the first Unsilent Night getting posted, I think, online on an old site called Trust Kill Shows. It was run by Trust Kill Records. And I remember seeing the posting, and a couple bands from Texas that had just started, that either had just started or were new to Solid State Records, like Oh Sleeper. Fit for a King had just gotten going here in Texas. Ryan and most of the lineup today wasn't even in the band at the time. It was just the name.
Yeah.
And I remember following some of these early bands because of Solid State Records and certain associations. So I was on the ground floor watching these bands grow. And Shane Blay from Oh Sleeper, you know, was originally between the Buried and Me and Evelyn and whatnot. So I knew those bands and Pluto Records and whatnot. So I watched this posting and I was like, man, what a lineup, what a concept. You know, I gotta get to that. And then as the months got closer to the event, you know, the excuses and everything kind of set in, and the event came and went. And then throughout the years, I'd see, you know, then So What came around later on, I think the next year, and I saw those postings. And every year, I'd see these things, and man, what a magical event. I got to go. I'd put it in the calendar. Then I joined the Navy and then gave up on music altogether. And so when I came out post-COVID, Luke had originally wanted to go to shows right before COVID. We had tickets for a number of shows in Seattle. Everything got refunded and canceled. And he originally wanted to start a YouTube channel called Luke the concert kid.
Okay.
And he wanted to go to concerts actually back then, and he originally wanted to like interview like members of different bands and whatnot. And it was an idea he had again. Unlike most people, I am not forced. Right? So he was about 4 or 5 years old.
Oh my God!
His first idea of of somehow getting involved in shows and music, and getting to know bands or sing along or getting involved came at about 4, but COVID kind of halted all of it, and then came to Texas. Well, COVID doesn't exist in Texas. Memorial Day weekend's coming around. And like I said, man, if I ever wind up in Dallas, Texas, I gotta check out one of these Mike Z things. So What was announced. I saw it pop up in my Facebook feed. I barely pay attention to Facebook at that point, but it was just a personal account. Saw it pop up and I'm like, oh man, because I was already following some of the things. Yeah. So it popped up and was like, oh, I gotta buy a ticket now. Before it said price is gonna increase soon. So without really making any thought of my work schedule or kids or anything, I just was like, the day is finally here where I'm gonna check out. It's been 15 years in the making. I'm going. I don't care what is in the way. I'm living in Dallas now. I'm stationed here. We're going. So what? Well, then it gets close to the day and the realization that it's Memorial Day weekend and my kid no longer has school on Friday. So babysitter, and I go, well, my mindset was, well, my wife, she probably doesn't work. Well, she tells me, well, no, I do daycare, not, so we still have kids. Like, I got to work that day. Yeah. She's like, well, you're going to need to take him with you. I'm like, huh? I was like, it's one thing to take him to a small show in Seattle where he's sitting like side stage, but indoors, but an outdoor festival I've never been to, I have no clue about, but I'm pretty sure it's massive. It's happening at a stadium. Yeah. I was like, I don't know, like, how I'm going to do that. And I was like, in second, I don't know. I got to buy him a ticket. I'm like, it's one thing to buy $10, $15, $20 ticket for a small, show or a tour package. Yeah. It's a whole other thing to buy a $200-$300 ticket. And I was like, plus, I've been dreaming of going to this like half my life, so I bought that VIP. So which means I'm gonna have to get him too. I'm like, this is a bridge too far. You just watch. Here comes the excuse. I'm gonna want to not go into this magical event again. Well, I'm reading through, and I'm a fine print person. I'm all about the details. Navy taught me that. Yeah. Well, way at the bottom of the ticket that I'm reading, the most magical thing I've ever seen in my life says, children 10 and under, free with paid adult, or something close to that. And I was like, bing! There it is. So my initial first thing was, and then I look, it's in the frequently asked questions, contact. If you have if your question isn't answered in our here, contact us. Well, of course, my question is way too obscure, so I hit the email and said, hey, if you have a VIP as the paid adult, and you have a 10 and under child, like, how does that work with the free? And then the most even more magical thing comes back. It says, the child is attached to whatever ticket level the paid adult is. So basically, whatever ticket you have, your kid automatically inherits that ticket as the free entry. Yeah. So I'm like, so you, just to clarify,
like, let me make sure. Absolutely.
That's sure. I'm VIP. My now 6-year-old kid, he's gonna get to come with me for free. No tricks. Like, what's the gimmick? You know, like, what's the deal? I said, no, that's just the policy. I said, let's go. So we get in the car, we drive to So What, and then that was basically how it all unfolded. But yeah, there was like a whole process that led, or very organic, that took us to So What. That was like years in the making, far beyond me having kids or Luke or anything, or being married, any of that. So yeah, like, you know, we've gone through a lot as a family, you know, and like you were saying earlier, when it comes to criticizing, like, you don't know what people are doing. You don't know if they're on their last dollar and they're trying to create something to pay their bills, or if they got a ton of money and they're just trying to accomplish a personal goal. You don't know if they're behind on their mortgage or their rent. You don't know what people are going through that led them to be in that spot and have that idea, but something put them there.
Yeah.
And so that's all. Little Mosh Kid, Luke, myself, we never went out and pushed ourselves, you know, with a goal or agenda. I never like, you know, or I even see sometimes like people will comment after Luke was brought on stage to do something, and you'll see in the comments like, "Oh, well, I'm gonna be at the California date in Santa Rosa with my kid. You better do this too." And it's like, you like, I think some people think that we paid our way, or we have some kind, or we force ourselves into places, but really, it's just a trial and error, hit and miss of like. And sometimes we've been in certain spots and we look at footage later on and realize, you know what, maybe that wasn't the best spot to be standing or the best thing to do during that band. Or and I'll be the first to admit that there's been times that even bands have asked us or asked him to do something and it's executed, and then looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, the band and like everyone was excited, but at the same time, maybe it was a little bridge too far, but most times not really. But we have had that where I've gone back and like, yeah, that was a bit much. Like, or I as a parent didn't pull him back. I let him go be himself just a little too much. And when they're kids, letting them be themselves is all about it. You know, let them, but then there also is a level of safety and concern and certain things that you see as a parent from a bigger view as you should. Yeah. And there's been times too where it's like people have criticized saying like, oh, I saw Dad and Luke, you know, and Luke was crying or he was mad. And it's like, and they misinterpret it. And it's like, no, you don't realize. Yes, we were. I'll be the first to acknowledge. Yes. Was he mad? Was he crying? Were we having an argument? Absolutely. You caught us in one of our rare and bad moments. But what you don't realize is he was mad because Norma Jean was on stage playing and he wanted to go stage dive. And I told him, hell no. Yeah. And then he wouldn't quit. So we just left the whole show, and he was mad while we were leaving because I wouldn't allow him to participate in the live atmosphere as much as he is used to or wanting to, because there was safety concerns that were far beyond his comprehension. And we did have a side stage argument, and he did cry because at the end of the day, no matter how mature and like conversations you've had and whatnot, he is 8.
He's still a kid.
He's a kid at the end of the day, and he's going to get angry and going to get pissed about dumb kid stuff. The fact that our dumb kid stuff that he gets angry about is between getting to stage dive during Norma Jean and not, versus where more kids it's probably likened to, well, you're going to get to watch PJ Masks for only 1 hour versus all day. I mean, that's where our dynamic as a family or father and son is different. Yeah. I'll give you that. Our things are probably a little more unconventional. But yeah, we do. We have, and I have to sometimes be the voice of reason. But I think a lot of times people see us and that don't know us because they don't have that trust or relationship, and they judge us from the outside looking in, and they get the wrong idea of. But it's very rare. Most people are super supportive, and we get a lot of cool feedback from a lot of people. And it's just been a really fun opportunity to and I know Luke wanted to be here. Yeah. He got a last minute opportunity to do something with our family that is very personal and something that been trying to set up for him for a long time, and last minute all the pieces came together. So
yeah, I'm glad that opportunity
but yeah,
happened.
Luke is not here because of injury or any death or anything crazy in the family. He is happy. He is in Minnesota
for something good
and doing something good. If anybody was concerned or wondering, as I think we're gonna wrap it up here, Luke is safe and sound with his grandparents, having the time of his life in a whole other atmosphere. But he did get it all out yesterday. Had a day to remember. Had a great time. And to all the folks at Toyota Music Factory or whatnot, you guys are awesome. And NoiseROT here.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And honestly, like the story is kind of, I wanted to know a little bit more about this, but honestly, for just from an outside perspective and not even like anything with like being in the scene or anything, but seeing the relationship that you have with Luke, like I said, ups and downs, whatever they may be, you know what I mean? Like where you're talking about, like, you know, where they see you out crying. Unfortunately, like with anything social media, you get a magnifying glass on you, so anything, and then the internet gets to say whatever they want about what you're doing. But from someone who's seen it and now over, you know, a good amount of time now, just seeing the relationship that you have with Luke is really special and it's really nice. And even hearing stories from you and Luke, like it just shows like something very special. So, you know, no matter what it becomes or turns into, like I think that alone is so special and such a great thing that you get to have like together. And I like that you get to you also share it with like the rest of the world with us, and I really do appreciate that. But yeah, thank you again for stopping by. Absolutely. This was episode 115. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.
Sounds and breakdowns.